My name is Dave Neff. I'm co-chair of this event with my colleague John Blackstock for our Parsons College Wall of Honor. So welcome to the 5th annual Parsons College Wall of Honor dedication ceremony. We're honored to have such a great turnout for this event to recognize members of our student body who have gone into their chosen profession and have made a mark not only on Fairfield, but the state of Iowa, on our country, and on the world. What I would like to do at this time is introduce our Mayor, Ed Malloy, and he will give you a mayoral welcome to Fairfield. Mayor Malloy.
Good morning, everyone. School spirit is enlivened, and I think the general's fine. We'll Well, welcome back to your home. Welcome back to Fairfield. We're very honored and very proud to have you here. You know, I was just talking with Bob Tree about how prepared our community is for this event, because over the last 2 weeks, on the front page of our Fairfield Ledger, we've been reading about our inductees and award recipients and the incredible lives that they've led and what they've accomplished. And we all get to share in that pride. And I realize that if Parsons College were still alive, this ceremony would probably be taking place somewhere on campus. It wouldn't have the notice of the public and of the whole community. So it is really our extraordinary good opportunity to share in this event with you, and the whole community welcomes you and is really prepared for this. So congratulations to all of the inductees for today's ceremony. And sharing the Parsons legacy here in this iconic building, this really center of our community at this point in time, with hundreds of events that come through here, thousands and thousands of people from outside our community come to different events here, whether it's a quilt show or a Jim and Rock Mineral show, or whether it's an Elvis impersonator on stage. We seem to get it all here. And they get a chance to review the tremendous legacy that Parsons had on our city, and that will forever be a part of our community. You know, earlier this year, in fact it was in January, we received a phone call from a woman who was a writer for Smithsonian Magazine, which is a monthly that comes out of the Smithsonian Institution. And last year, they had done an issue dedicated to 12 or 10 best places in America to visit. Now, I don't know which cities were in that issue, but they were not governed by population. So this year, what they decided to do was follow that up with an issue where they featured the top 10 best cities in America to visit below 15,000 population. So we received a call in January and said that through their research, we had made the top 20, and that she was going to come and visit to determine who would be in the top 10. So we had her here on the last week of January. Not our best. It was cold, it was foggy, the fog was freezing on the roads, we couldn't hardly get around, but she saw enough. And she really got a sense of how extraordinary Fairfield has become over the last couple of decades with the advent of so much of the culture and the arts that have been expressed. The university, some of the sustainability elements like Abundance Eco Village just north of the city, where there are 20 homes that are off the grid. So many things that you just wouldn't find anywhere, and have their own ability to attract tourism, that we made the top 10. We were number 7 in America among cities to visit. And all of these great things happen in this community because we have people who own their passions. And so many things get done. And I, at this time, want to recognize a man whose singular passion for his alma mater, Parsons College, has created this and has made this an indelible and important part of our community, and that is Dave Neff. He has many important friends and partners in this effort, but for Dave, in our community. He is Mr. Parsons. He's been on our chamber ambassadors group, and they wear red jackets, but when Dave's wearing green, you know what's going on. So Dave, thank you for that, and welcome everyone. Please have a wonderful weekend here. Be happy. I've just been invited to lunch, so I'll be happy to join you today. If you have any other individual questions, be happy to answer them at that time. Thank you very much.
Many times when we look back and think, where have we been over the years, we need to look forward. And today, those of you who received the e-newsletter are aware, this is our first live streaming over the internet. We want to thank Jason Strong, who's in the back orchestra section, and Fairfield Media Center for putting this together with support from our Alumni Association and our Foundation Fund. And from what I understand from one of our inductees, there are 40 Pi Kappa Alpha brothers in Alexandria, Virginia, sitting around their screen. So welcome, Pikes, Alexandria. If you take a moment and bow your head, please. Dear Lord, we thank you for the vision of Lewis B. Parsons in founding a college in Fairfield, Iowa in 1875. We thank you for the faculty and staff who shared their knowledge and gave vision to the students that raising your own bar a little higher is a good thing. We thank you for this class since 2013 and what they have contributed to their chosen field and to the United States and the world during their careers. Keep all safe as we journey to our respective homes. Amen. 4 years ago on this weekend, we conducted the inaugural class. And I would like to recognize those folks in your program. We have a listing, so I'm not going to read everybody, but we do have some inductees that are present today. So I could ask the house lights to come up a little bit, please. And as I call your name as a recent inductee, would you please stand? Dr. William Biff Coomer, class of 1968. You would stand, please. And just remain standing. Class of 1957. Dean Gabbard, class of 1946. Class of 1968. Kay McPherson Ferguson, class of 1959. Class of 1969. Thank you very much. This year we have a fifth outstanding class to share with you today. Each year with our winter e-newsletter, we open a nomination period and invite alumni to present their names of Parsons students to be considered for the next October Wall of Honor induction ceremony. Our committee consists of Dr. Robert Tree on stage with me, John Braidwood, who, John, hi over the internet, upstate New York. He's got a 50th class reunion that he's helping with in upstate New York. My colleague John Blackstock, who's right here in the front row, and myself. And we consider these names and come to a final consensus. The nominations are announced during the summer e-newsletter. The vision for this ceremony was shared with us by John Blackstock, class of 64. John, please stand, because if it wasn't for this, we wouldn't be doing it. And if you enjoy the e-news, it's thanks to John, because his writing talents, he gathers, Nancy receives, everybody funnels it to John, and he puts this quarterly issue together with a special one that just showed up the other day. So John, thank you for the e-news and the dedication that we're doing. And this was announced in 2008 when we did the Alumni Hall. Recommendation to form a Parsons College Foundation by John Braidwood. I mentioned his name a moment ago at the class reunion, summer of 2003. So it's been 10 years since some of these visions started percolating. Since the announcement of the foundation, John has worked tirelessly to raise funds to assist in the construction of the Arts and Convention Center and our Alumni Hall. Total dollars raised from alumni, faculty, and staff during this 10-year time period exceed $212,000. So thanks to you who have made this possible. You'll find the names of many of the contributors in the brickyard, just outside the main entryway to the atrium. Most of you came in these front doors, but there's a brick recognition yard in that area. So thanks to you who have made this possible. Nancy Wortman, if you'd like to stand, please. I want to recognize you. You'll be on stage after a bit. Nancy. Nancy is the president of our Parsons College Alumni Association. And she brought the recommendation to form this association to a reunion. And currently, we have over 3,000 names of our alumni in the database. Most recently, Dr. Dean Roussos, business professor that some of you may remember, became our 3,000th listing. And this serves as the heart of information sharing. I'd also like to recognize Ed Longenecker. And Ed lives in Mount Pleasant. He came from Gettysburg. I think Nancy was from Gettysburg too, so thank you, Ed. And Ed puts together and makes sure this e-news goes out, so it's not spam, but you can see it. Another name is Doug Marion, who was with us a year ago. He was not able to be here today. And Ken Rice. If you would stand also, please, Ken. He's our webmaster. He's the most Dr. Robert L. Tree has provided a sounding board for the evolution of the entire process. We will forever be indebted to these individuals who have given so generously of their time and their talent. For without their energy, enthusiasm, and passion, these events, these communications of opportunity would not be possible. Please join me, and I've asked them to stand already. You recognize me. One more round of applause for the people that make it work. We are very fortunate in Fairfield and surrounding areas to have folks that were involved in the faculty and the staff and trustees and they're in attendance at this time. I'd ask for the house lights again, please. I'm going to recognize a few more people. And if you hold your applause on this one, so all have been recognized on this. Ray Ham, assistant women's basketball coach and admission staff. Myself, physical education. Bob Spencer, head women's basketball coach. Dr. Biff Coomer, he was intramural director. Dr. Robert Tree, history, dean of the college. An inductee today, Vera Price Young, physical education. Bob and Martha Rasmussen are with us today, and they work in publicity communications and counseling and dean for women. Phyllis Williams is also in the audience today from Des Moines. We're very glad that she is here. So, for all those folks, thank you for being with us. A special shout out goes to our sororities. If it wasn't for them showing up, our numbers wouldn't be nearly what they are today. So especially Betty Downey, Wow Downey, she's not my sorority sister, she's my sister-in-law. And she rallied the Alpha Gamma Delta sorority. So all the Alpha Gams, would you please stand up and show us your being Alpha Gamma Delta sorority. A recognition, one of our inductees, Narda Simonson Murphy, Alpha Z Delta, she has a contingency. So all the Alpha Z's, if you would stand up, please. I'm just going to go through Delta Zetas here too. So Delta Zeta, if you are here, we would also like to recognize our earliest graduate. He is not with us this morning, but I want to remind you that at 1:30 this afternoon, Mr. Lee T. Gallo will be receiving friends, student, alumni at the Sunnybrook facility. They're on the map, and if not, we'll talk to you at lunch about it. Class of 37, remember to visit him from 1:30 to 2:30. I spoke with his power of attorney yesterday, and he asked your assistance. If you choose to go and visit Lee, please tell him your name, please tell him when you graduated, and maybe one specific event that you remember. Because Lee will be 99, and if you walk up and say, Lee, remember me? Please don't. Please don't. Please offer your name, class year, and a quick story, and that will refresh his memory on that. Also, Vera Young, class of 46 will be recognized here today too. Most recently, we have class of 73. I think I saw Pat Arns-Peck come in, so Pat, if you would stand. Susie Steinbeck is registered. I didn't see her yet today. Susie's registered. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Also, we couldn't have this happen if it wasn't for the staff and administration of this fine facility. So I won't try and do all the names, but Rusty Lippincott leads the team, and Kevin and Eric and a bunch of other folks make this happen, and we are greatly, greatly thankful. Now, the moment you've been waiting for. Traveled all the miles from Boston and from Florida and from Washington State, California, and all points in between. The 5th annual induction of Parsons College Wall of Honor. The formality will be, I will call the presenter to the podium, and after brief remarks about our honoree, we will then call the name of the honoree to come forward. So everybody should use this side as your name is called to come forward. Each will say a few words and then present it to the Wall of Honor plaque, which we have on the tables. Dr. Tree will be with us. We'll move to the center of the stage, and a photo will be taken of Dr. Tree, the inductee, and the presenter, and myself, and then the inductee will remain on stage, and we will fill these chairs from the center over to the far side with our 10 newest inductees. So once again, all proceed in from this side as your name is called. We also ask, so that everyone can hear, if you would keep 4 to 6 inches and keep it at your upper lip. Otherwise, people won't hear you, and especially the folks that are viewing over the internet. So Dr. Tree, are you ready? Let us begin. Our first inductee is Bill Bangham, class of 1970. Would Frank Shalonic please come to the podium as a presenter?
That's fine. Thank you very much. Good morning. It is my honor and my pleasure to introduce you to a dear friend and a fraternity brother, Mr. Bill Bangham. Bill is a legacy to Parsons. His father had 2 cousins to attend Parsons in the 1920s. Bill arrived in Fairfield in 1962 and graduated in 1970. Relax. Hold on. He left school 2 times and was drawn back both times by the faculty of Parsons College. Bill also paid his own way through Parsons College for all those years. The diversity of Alpha Chi Rho was a great match for everybody. Bill majored in biology, which is very, very similar to photography, and it's all about observation. As a photojournalist, Bill has gone through over 4 passports and has traveled to over 70 countries in the world. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my honor and privilege to introduce you to Mr. Bill Bangham.
The worst part about this was wondering what Frank was going to say. So that's over. Okay, yeah. This is a special place. This is, I guess, a moment of gratitude, and it's a bit humbling, quite frankly. Never expected to be standing in a place like this, any more than I ever expected to be a photojournalist when I came to Parsons College. But there's I guess I could say a number of people, but I remember interviewing a professor at another university a number of years ago, and I asked him, what constitutes the best kind of education for an individual? And he said to me, he thought for a moment, and he said, you know, a good library, you know, time to read the books in it, and a few good people to discuss them with. And you know, that's what I found here. Particularly in the biology department, there was Ralph Chermak and John King and Floyd von Owen, who was in his 70s when I came here, and I think took every class the man ever taught. And last but not least, Hugh Myers, the chairman of the department, who was incredibly brilliant. Ralph, I learned that I didn't want to spend my life in a clinic or a laboratory. I knew it had to do something with being outside, out and about among the people. With John King, I learned to smoke a pipe. And we would sit and, as he said, burn matches together. I got to be a student assistant my last year for John and for Dr. Myers, and taught labs and tutored students who were having trouble in biology. And the thing I remember most in those days was Hugh Myers agonizing over the students that he taught. He just wasn't just a brilliant researcher, but he loved the students that he had. He was always looking for, the discussions we would have when we got together would be, how do we motivate this student? And I saw D students become B students, and failing students become passing students underneath Hugh's tutelage. I don't know, it was bizarre in those days, in those conversations. I remember going to see Floyd von Owen one day and ending up in the library, checking out a book called The Ugly American. What does that have to do with plant morphology? I don't know, but that was the kind of atmosphere that was here. And I remember running into a poem by W.H. Auden, and the last stanza of it, he titled it September 1939, and the last stanza of it goes, defenseless under the night, our world in stupor lies, and yet ironic, and yet everywhere, ironic points of light flash out wherever the just proclaim their messages. And I, like them, made of arrows and of dust, would be an affirming flame. And I thought about that was kind of what Hugh Myers was, an affirming flame, amongst the uncertainties of these young people that were passing beneath him. And he had a saying about these students. He would call them his peckerwoods. And I didn't know what a peckerwood was, and I'll be honest with you, I hesitated to ask him, but I had to know, just what do you mean, what's a peckerwood? And it's a southern term. And Dr. Myers grew up in the Mississippi Delta, and in the old days, the plantation owners would take the wood that was too crooked to be used for construction, and too knotty and gnarled to be used for furniture, and they would stack it along the riverbanks. And the riverboats coming upstream would pick it up and use it to fuel their journey. And Dr. Myers said, you know what peckerwood is? He said, it's wood that no one else thinks has any value. And yet if you put it in the right place, it will fuel one heck of a journey. And I like to think of myself as being one of Hugh's peckerwoods. Certainly not, my life did not turn out as I expected it to be, but I wouldn't have it any other way. And I admired Dr. Myers so much that I even kind of imitated him a little bit, and people would goad me into doing it, because he had this Mississippi Delta accent that was overlaid with some cadences that came out of his time in the Midwest, and then he had these bizarre little Southern sayings that he'd always say, and so I don't know if it was so much of an imitation as it was a caricature of his accent. And one day I was teaching one of his labs, and I lapsed into it because I think some of the students go to be into it, And I said something like, well, today we are going to study a certain aspect of histology, and you will be as happy as a dead pig in the sunshine when we're finished. And everybody was laughing. All of a sudden, everybody was silent, and I realized Dr. Myers was standing right behind me. And I turned around kind of slow, and I looked, and he just kind of looked back at me and said, "Carry on, Mr. Dang. Carry on." And that's what I tried to do.
I nominated Dorothy Topping Bell because I know so much about her. I'm not going to tell everything, Dorothy, don't get worried. Dorothy is a resident of Fairfield, where she's lived for 57 years. Dorothy Topping came to Parsons in the fall of 1944 from Van Buren County, Iowa, where she graduated from Stockport High School as the valedictorian for a class. At Parsons, Dorothy majored in English and was a member of the portfolio staff, the Parsons Players, the YWCA, the International Relations Club, the Student Christian Association, the Empyrean Sorority, which later became Delta Zeta. During her years at Parsons, Dorothy met a returning veteran, J.Q. Bell. And in the summer of 1948, following her graduation, they were married. They left for Iowa State University, where Jay was already a student in the College of Veterinary Medicine. During the next 3 years, Dorothy worked to support them as her young husband finished school. Upon completion of his doctorate, the Bells moved to South Dakota, where he set up a practice. During their 2 years in South Dakota, their 2 daughters were born. When Fairfield veterinarian Dr. Miller was killed suddenly by lightning, the Bells moved to Fairfield to purchase this veterinary practice. Thus began Dr. Bell's very successful practice in Fairfield and the surrounding area. Early on, Dorothy assisted her husband by fielding phone calls at home, recording the client's name, directions to his farm, and symptoms of the animals, all the while caring for their family, which now numbered 4 children with the birth of their 2 sons. Dorothy has been very active in the First Presbyterian Church of Fairfield. For years, she was co-chairman of the wedding committee, was editor of the church newsletter, served as a Sunday school teacher for 20 years, and is currently serving her 2nd year, 3-year term as a deacon. When one of the women of the church fell, suffering a concussion and losing the ability to speak clearly, Dorothy spent countless hours trying to help the woman regain her speech. She was recognized by the Association of Presbyterian Women with an honorary life membership for her dedication. Dorothy also served many years as secretary of Gallup Church Circle, a position she still holds. She's a member of the Women's Club, the Wit and Wisdom Club, PEO, Tri-T, and several bridge clubs. Dr. Bell's career was brought to an untimely end when he died from cancer in 1982. After Jay's death, Dorothy decided to devote her energies to promoting the arts in Fairfield, the Fairfield schools, and the surrounding community. Thus began the next very active period of her life. As a supporter of the arts, Dorothy has been devoted to attending as many exhibits, concerts, recitals, and plays as possible. She attended school board meetings as well, speaking up when programs were in danger. Her passion and dedication naturally developed into long and effective memberships on the boards of several art organizations. Dorothy's been a member of the board of the Southeast Iowa Symphony Orchestra, one of Southeast Iowa's premier cultural organizations, since 1965. In 1985, she was named an honorary life board member of the Southeast Iowa Symphony Orchestra. Dorothy accepted membership on the Fairfield Concert Association Board in 1979, serving as a board member for 33 years, 21 of them as secretary. She diligently managed the logistics of the membership campaign and enjoyed helping to select artists to appear in Fairfield, many of them young musicians just starting their careers. She was a charter member of the Fairfield Art Association, founded in 1966. Dorothy was part of a delegation that she served as was the secretary and the newsletter editor. At one time, Dorothy was part of a delegation that went to Des Moines to lobby the governor in favor of the arts. In 1988, she started the Fairfield Garden Tour, which showcases selected gardens for public viewing as a fundraiser for the Fairfield Arts Association. In 2011, the association renamed it the Dorothy Bell Garden Tour. In this, the 25th year of the tour, a special celebration was held. The Fairfield Art Association hosted a Dorothy Bell Garden Tour. In her garden at 204 Iowa Avenue, friends bid her garden a fond farewell and wished Dorothy the best as she moved. Dorothy was known for her lovely tulips. Each year she would oversee the planting of 800 tulip bulbs imported from Holland on the berm of her backyard, among other flowers. It was a show that many people drove by to see. I'm sure they will not be surprised to learn that all 4 Bell children are involved in the arts. The oldest, Sue, is a professor of nursing at Minnesota State University in Mankato. Martha is a majority owner of the architecture firm of Tilton, Kelly & Bell in Chicago, and is a fellow of the American Institute of Architects. David is a retired landscape architect, presently living in North Carolina. Scott has been an oboist with the Pittsburgh Symphony Orchestra for 20 years and teaches oboe in Duquesne and Carnegie Mellon Universities in Pittsburgh. Dorothy has worked tirelessly in the schools and communities of Fairfield to promote the arts in any way possible. In 1998, she's given the Outstanding Citizen Community Service Award by the Fairfield Chamber of Commerce. In 1994 and 95, she received the first Outstanding Fine Arts Promoter Award from the Fairfield Arts Association. In 2000, she's given the Marsh Award for enhancing the quality of individual and community life in Fairfield. I know you will agree with me that Dorothy Bell is no ordinary woman, but she's an alumna of which we can be very proud, most deserving of this honor.
First of all, I would like to thank my presenter, my dear friend,
Vera Young, who's been my friend for a very long time. And this Parsons Wall of Honor means so much to me. I also want to thank the members of the Parsons College Wall of Honor for choosing the people they did for the class of 2013. This means a very great, this is a great honor to me, and thank you very much.
Thanks. Good morning. I actually had a whole bunch of prepared remarks, and Dave suggested that as I walked in the building this morning that I speak from the heart. And being here in the Heartland, I think that is totally appropriate. I want to thank Dave for giving us the opportunity to come back to Fairfield, me for the first time, and share the wonderful legacy of Parsons College. I know that for David, the unique qualities of Parsons made a huge impact on his life and enriched his life in ways that also reflect back on his successes and reflect back on Parsons. It was here in Fairfield that David met professors who genuinely cared about him and wanted him to succeed. I heard that over and over last night as I met other alumni who echoed that sentiment. They were more than just teachers, they were mentors. They nurtured his talents and became role models for him. It was here at Parsons that he honed his skills in debate as part of a team that may or may not have beaten Cambridge, but certainly held their own in an international debate competition that packed the field house. It was here that he was also able to pursue his love of drama, getting involved with the theater department and being engaged by the outstanding people who were part of that. Outside of college, he accomplished his goal of learning to fly and earned his pilot's license by trading his skills at repairing airplane radios in exchange for flying lessons over in Ottumwa. He managed to do all of this while earning his degree in chemistry and physics and making Dean's List, thereby learning what I think is the most important lesson any college student can learn: how to successfully balance work and life. Each of these skills contributed to the foundation for the successes in his life for which you honor him today. As a native Wisconsinite myself, I also believe that the chance to spend time here in the Heartland also served this native New Yorker well by showing him the values that we Midwesterners hold so dear. When David graduated, he did return to New York and work at ABC, and if you read his biography, you'll see all of his various accomplishments there. The fact that if you watched and enjoyed any Olympics coverage in 1984 or 1988 from Los Angeles or Calgary, it was because David put together all of the technical requirements for both ABC television's coverage and, in the case of Los Angeles, world coverage by every host broadcaster in every country around the world. For those efforts, he won 2 Emmy Awards and was also inducted into the very prestigious Society of Motion Picture and Television Engineers. But it really was all of those qualities that he learned here at Parsons that brought him the ability and the comfort level to pursue all of the other things that he's done in his life, including balancing that work with his volunteer career in the United States Coast Guard Auxiliary, which now occupies, I figure, roughly 80 hours a week of his time. He is the Assistant National Commodore for Response, Prevention, and International Affairs, which means that in the unlikely event that you are ever lost on any of the waterways of the United States and the Coast Guard or the auxiliary comes to help you, Parsons College has a role in that as well. His work has taken him around the world and even into outer space. As part of his current job as president of Elliott Technologies, he worked with the Discovery Channel on a television project with the International Space Center. So everywhere you look, the impact of Parsons is part of David's life and now my life as well. I too have some family here in Fairfield, and just before the presentation, my brother by marriage said he's lived here for 30 years and is now part of the community. He said it's just because this is such a welcoming community that it really opens its heart and embraces people who come here. And I think that that's what Fairfield did for David. And I know he's honored, as am I, by this honor today. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And thank you all for my ability to be here today. You've heard that I sort of love things maritime. So when Dave spoke to me and said, what did Parsons mean to you? I sort of thought in nautical symbology. I said, when I first needed it, Parsons was like a lifeboat, and it came to me to help me when I needed help, when I needed some direction in my life. And then as I stayed here at Parsons and became involved in the life of the college, the professors, people like Dr. Ryler, people especially like Dr. East, provided me with a safe harbor, a place to grow and to learn and to participate in the activities of the college. The other students of the college gave me some joy and some input and the ability to interact and learn in my life. So the faculty, the students, the administration, the fact that Parsons itself, the ethos that Parsons had, and I hope continues, at least in our hearts, provided a launching point for my growth in my life and hopefully my contributions to my profession and my world and my recollections of all the things that Parsons and all of you meant to me. Thank you.
Edwin Everett Green, class of 49, posthumously. His daughter, Joellen Crow, was going to be here, but due to other family commitments, she is not. And so granddaughter will be providing the presentation today, and Ed's widow, Kay Green, teacher in Fairfield District for many years, will be the recipient on his behalf. So I would ask you to come forward at this time for the Green family. Amy Trellinger.
If you'd had it written, it still might not have been correct. I have a hard time pronouncing it some days. So it is my great honor to present on my family's behalf for my grandfather. Wow, I didn't think it would be this difficult. My grandfather was an educator. He was born with that gift, and Parsons College helped him to achieve that. He did it in everything that he did. My grandfather often said if he could get a child to smile, he knew that he could teach them and that they were eager to learn. He had a wonderful sense of humor and often liked pulling people's legs and telling them jokes in as little time as an elevator ride. So he enjoyed people of all ages and of all walks of life. He would motivate us, and I say us, my brother and my cousin and I were lucky enough to get to spend our summers with my grandparents, 6 weeks each summer. It was always an adventure. We would plant trees and we would pull thistles. He had this great idea on his farm that we could drive the truck around and pull all the thistles, and he would pay us a nickel a thistle. He got the better end of the deal, for certain. Yes, ma'am, you wanted to help? Her sister also wanted to help today, but she is away at the Hawkeye football game. I asked her what she wanted to make sure that I told you all about her grandfather, her great-grandpa Ed, and she said, I want you to tell them that he was nice, that he was kind, and that he was funny. So I'm graciously accepting this award and honoring both of my grandparents, because if it were not for Parsons College, they would not have met, and none of us would be here.
I was so pleased to have Ed's name included here because he was a wonderful husband, a funny person, and he did so much for the Moody houses, and I'm sure we'll appreciate it. Thank you.
Good morning. It is my honor to be here to honor Dave Hardy, and I bet most of you wonder what in the heck I'm doing out here. How did I get to know Dave Hardy? Well, I think his stomach was the way I got to know Dave Hardy. He lived right next door to us on Liberty Drive, and every so often about mealtime, he would decide to come over and play with the kids. And so he got to stay there. Dave, I don't know if most of you know, but he was the first recreation director in the city of Fairfield, and I'll let him explain all the stuff he had to work with on that. One other incident that I had with Dave, one time he and I were talking, and he said that he had a job offer in Florida, and I said, good, why don't you take it? Well, he didn't have a way to get there. I said, well, I'll take some time off and go down. He had a car, and I'll just take you down and get it. So we got in the car and drove to Florida. I thought he had a place to stay when he got there. He didn't. So we had a hotel room, and Saturday I flew out. Rose was going to meet me in Chicago. Jim and Raylene Hale were there at that time, but she was staying with them. So I got on the plane, got to Chicago, visited Hale, got back on Sunday, went back to work on Monday, got a rap at the door. Rose did about 11 o'clock on Monday morning. It was Dave Hardy. She says, what are you doing here? She says, wait till Jim gets home. He says, I don't want to see him. So anyway, with all of these, I'm not going to throw the accolades that Dave has, but he has made one wonderful thing of himself with the job he's got, and also a beautiful wife down here that looked after him all these years. It is my honor to present David B. Bulldog Hardy.
First time I met him was when I was intramural director, and he says, I've got a whistle. If you have a striped shirt, I'll work for you. Dr. Hardy.
Everything that Jim just told you is true. I came to Parsons, I guess, in 1966, not unlike a lot of other students. It was a long journey. I was under the influence of my hormones at a youthful time. And I came to Parsons College, and I stepped off the plane, and I looked at this place, and I went, this is nice. I came from a large urban center in the Northeast that was filled with smog, steel mills, and coal mines. And I knew right away this was going to be a great place. And it turned out to be everything that I expected. I think that during my professional career, in fact, I know that I have thought about Parsons College and Fairfield many, many times. I'm probably maybe a little more fortunate than others because I had an opportunity to work here. My first professional experience was here in Fairfield. And I gave a lot of thought, believe it or not, what I was going to say here this morning. And if you were in front of Hy-Vee this morning at 6:15, you saw me practicing that speech and going, what is that guy doing over there? Trying to get rid of the nerves, you know, a little bit at a time. My wife said, Dave, come on up here and speak from your heart. So in the next 5 or 6 minutes, I'm going to give you from my heart. I can't think of anything in my life other than my family and my wife that had more personal impact on me than the time that I spent in this community. There are a lot of lessons learned, a lot of experiences. Some of the lessons were very tough, some of them were not quite as tough, and they were all great. If I was going to point my finger at one thing that was so fantastic about Parsons, it was their tremendous desire to enhance student learning. This was not just a concept that they gave lip service to. They provided resources, brought in probably the most magnificent faculty in the country, I think, at that time. Gave us opportunities, if we couldn't get the information in a primary lecture, had opportunities for a tutorial session, and provided just tremendous opportunities. All you had to do was take your hand and grab it. It took me a while to grab it. But I did embrace it after a while, and the light did go on. And I would imagine that after this 40-year career that I've had, and the guys that I talked to in my fraternity yesterday that I hadn't seen for 4 years, how did you become an economist? Most of the time we saw you were on the intramural field, or blowing a whistle. My bachelor's degree here from Parsons is in physical education. But what Parsons gave me was the opportunity to fully understand what learning was about. It gave us, I think, all an opportunity to dream and become better than we were and larger than we were at that time. You had to go after it, you couldn't quit, and you had to have a dream. I was fortunate enough to, throughout my entire career, to institute the skills and the lessons that I learned here at Parsons College. As an economist, we work on very complicated mathematical and statistical models, particularly with issues that are as recent as the oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico. I learned those things right here at Parsons College. I had an opportunity to spend a lot of time with a professor who was a great athlete, particularly for his age at that time. And I thought 45 years old. Wow, where'd that time go? And he said, Dave, there's something we have to understand. You're getting there, but you're not there yet. It's important to understand all this information that's in the book. But if you're really truly going to be successful, you have to take all that information and develop concepts and put it together with a purpose in going out in this world and trying to solve some problems and get involved in decision making. That was a lesson that I learned when I left this campus, and I've used it my entire life. It has worked successfully in my entire life. I can't think of another place that I would have rather been, or friends that I would have rather have had than the ones right here. I saw a fraternity brother of mine last night for the first time in 4 years from Pi Kappa Alpha. And I asked him, what have you done for 40 years? And he told me. Then he said, you know, Dave, every time I cross that border and I come into Iowa, I get a smile on my face. And I said, I do too. My wife and I came here on Thursday. We spent time in the community, visiting with friends. And this is, I think, the third or fourth time we've been back since I graduated. It has always been a great experience. Throughout my entire career, people ask me where I graduated from, my first response is not Florida State, it's Parsons College. And they say, well, where's that? And I tell them, one of the best places in the world, Fairfield, Iowa. I think if I had one sentence about being here, it's the fact that Parsons College closed. Their academic model was outstanding. And it was indeed unfortunate that that model could not go forward for other generations. We are in a position in this country where the young people that we have need to go forward, need to succeed. I'm reminded once again about the student learning process at Parsons. There was a process here that wanted you to succeed. It was not a process where we wanted to hand out Fs. I remember in the articles that came out in magazines and so on and so forth, that chastised us and criticized us for a lot of things. Many people thought that was academic, and it really truly wasn't. We were an outstanding academic institution. We were then, we are in our hearts today. The graduate students that I teach today in agricultural economics, many of them don't get the concepts the first time. But what I learned here so many years ago, that it's okay not to get it the first time. That means I have to work a little harder. And to get them to the point where the light bulb comes on, where we need these people so much, is in itself a journey worth taking. Thanks, everybody.
I remember it well. My first day of classes at Parsons College. It was on Monday, June 14th, 1965. I was 18 and freshly graduated from high school. Although I had to miss the ceremony to get here for the summer trimester, my early gym class preceded Drama Appreciation with Sidney Spade. With gym clothes tucked under my arm, I entered the lecture hall and found my seat. At that moment, one of my sneakers dropped on the foot of the person sitting next to me. Yes, it was Larry's foot. We started a brief conversation, went for coffee after class, and from that moment on, Larry and I started dating, and still do. Once I found my way around the campus, it was apparent Parsons was such a nurturing place. Most important was the accessibility, empathy, and sensitivity of the instructors. Because of Larry's radio career, we moved a lot. So my schooling did not end here. And unfortunately, I didn't find those qualities at the other 3 colleges I attended. I regret to this day not having Parsons on my diploma. It is great that many of you who made Parsons what it was are here today. Thank you for getting us here today. And now my husband of 46 years, Larry.
One of our photos in the case out here, you'll see KMCD microphone, and this is where Larry used to sit and he broadcast live from the Pecan Bowl when Parsons played North Dakota State. Larry Little.
I go up, Pops. This is Manson's Day. I have a couple of others. Hello, sports fans. That's the greeting that I started using at KMCD Radio back when I was doing sports, and I still use that greeting till today. And many times when people see me on the street, they don't say, hello, Larry, they say, hello, sports fans. Well, to all who made this day and weekend possible, to all previous honorees and to my fellow honorees, and our many friends who shared this day with us, I dedicate my remarks to all of you. And to my late dear friend and classmate, Dr. John DeFazio, who with his wife Carol spent many years teaching in the Fairfield Public Schools. And my former roommate, Doug Pocock, who had planned on being here today to introduce me, but Doug was not able to make it. And many of you may remember Doug from his days at the Portfolio, the yearbook The Legend. He was the official photographer. In fact, he was the official photographer here at Parsons College for many years. Today is about overcoming adversity, getting a second chance, life-altering events and turning points. I have to say this at the outset, the enormity of this honor is beyond measure. It would be a huge understatement to say that I was speechless upon receiving Dave Neff's phone call, and I'm rarely at a loss for words. In fact, many times I'm accused of talking too much. That won't be the case today, but I am a storyteller, as Don Hewitt from CBS 60 Minutes always said, so I hope that I relate a couple of stories that will be familiar to you, especially as I'm honored today. I'm going to talk about what brought Nancy and Larry as we look back on Parsons College, and talk about what brought Nancy, Paris, and Larry living together. I have to say this, though, also at the outset, my highest professional honor and personal honor, too, is when one of my students is recognized with a major award. But several have told me as we were getting ready to return to Iowa, this would be the best, and they said I wouldn't fully realize it until this very moment. And they are correct. As student number 655280, and Nancy 656997, I look around this vast room and I know I'm not alone when I say I have experienced many life-altering events, but without question, the, shall I say, first turning point in my young adult life was when I recognized in pharmacy school that it was not for me. So in the fall of 1964, I visited my high school baseball coach. By then he was my former high school baseball coach, who coincidentally I had dinner with just 2 weeks ago after not seeing him for many years. Back in 1964, Coach Minnick advised that I look for another school, one that might be more geared to my interests, and one in which I might be able to play baseball. When I got home, I opened a small paperback book. It was written by Herbert Tyler entitled The Conversion of Chaplain Cohen. In addition to being humorous, it contained advice firsthand from the chaplain who wound up at an air base in a small town in Mississippi. Chaplain Cohen's story and Coach Minnick's advice led me to, and this should sound familiar, Lovejoy's College Catalog. And the rest, as they say, is history. I soon accompanied a friend to meet with a Parsons College recruiter. Remember them? My friend did not apply, but I did, and I got accepted, received a partial baseball scholarship, thanks to the Philadelphia Phillies, and arrived steamer trunk and tow at the Fairfield train station on February 4th, 1965. It seemed like 25 degrees below zero, maybe 40 below zero, but I do exaggerate. Like many others, I left the trunk at the train station, took that long, cold walk to the campus, and I knew right away it was my new home away from home. Early the next morning, 5 a.m. to be exact, I reported to Coach Joe Lutz for baseball practice. I faced a pitch from Dick Mills, who went on to pitch for the Boston Red Sox. I immediately knew I'd better study hard because playing baseball would not be my future. I have to tell you this, and I don't have it in my notes, but that first pitch I did not see. I heard it, but I didn't see it. It might be because the lights were dim at the Fry Thomas Fieldhouse. But Coach Lutz's words have stayed with me all these years. Sacrifice, respect, discipline, and desire. Commitment and responsibility. Coach Lutz defined luck as preparation meeting opportunity. Coach Lutz and Parsons did their share. Another turning point, luckily, came soon after I injured my right knee playing baseball. KNCD Radio was broadcasting the game from Legion Field. I knew one of the announcers, Terry Shockley, was leaving. He was going to be heading to Madison, Wisconsin. So I asked his partner, Dave Spillman, if I could fill in. Dave asked, "Have you ever announced?" And I responded, yes. A little white lie, not saying it was as a public address announcer rather than play-by-play. Well, thanks to that stretching of the truth and a little bit of luck, I have been in radio in one form or another ever since. The most important turning point, life-altering event, occurred on the first day of the summer 1965 trimester. It was in Student Center 1. That's when I sat down in Sydney State's Drama Appreciation class, as you just heard, and next to me was the cutest little blonde I had ever seen. She's still cute, she's still blonde. And I better say still little. We were married 2.5 years later in September 1967, just a few months after graduation. We're the proud parents of Julie Beth Kramer, who you've just met, her husband Billy, our son Adam Seth, who's a professor at Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore, and his wife Claire. Julie and Billy have 10.5-year-old Alana and 7.5-year-old Aiden, and Adam and Claire just had, 6 months ago, Beatrix Grace, that's why we call her Tracy. My Rowan University students often asked about my teaching style. Why my office was adorned in green and white or Iowa rose. Why I wore green and white during academic ceremonies. And I said I brought some props. This is what I wore. I know you can't see it from back there, but they usually give you the graduate degrees to wear on your regalia. This is green and white. I had to send it back twice to get the right colors, and the red that you might see on there is for communication. They also asked a question. They said, I've written a couple of books. They said, why are the books that you've written green and white? I said, well, you'll find out in a moment. And then they asked, what's your favorite college mascot? Well, that would be the Wildcat. And my answer to all those questions is, why are all these? Because it's 2 words, Parsons College, Parsons College. Among the most fortunate days of my life are my high school baseball coach's advice, my coincidental meeting with that Parsons recruiter, getting into Parsons, injuring my knee, totally embracing the Parsons plan, graduating from Parsons, and meeting and marrying Nancy. If it were not for Miller G. Roberts' vision, Doc Bob, the incredible professors, preceptors, and tutors, I would never have achieved the successes I have. I owe so much to so many, not only from Parsons, but from the people right here in Fairfield. You may find this hard to believe. A day, and I do mean a day, does not go by without my thinking about Parsons. I don't even want to consider where I'd be without Doc Bob and what I observed from Parsons College. It was so much more than academics. My total education included the brilliance of my dedicated professors and other faculty, plus learning a work ethic that my parents already possessed. What it meant to be a committed teacher and coach, and social skills, which led to many incredible lifelong relationships. We were constantly encouraged to succeed. I promised myself back then, if ever I became a college instructor, and I never, ever was not even close to being at the top of my mind. If ever I became a college instructor, I would emulate Drs. Baird, Russo's, Robertson, Rodner, Dr. Tree, and so many others. And I had this book, Scholars Who Teach, from Parsons College, 1966-67, and how true it is. As a 1999 Rowan graduate posted on Facebook just a couple of weeks ago, you, Professor Litwin, promised to pay it forward. And now my husband and I are too. That is the Parsons legacy. In many respects, February 4th, 1965 seems like only yesterday. But I do ask, where have the years gone from a snowy Thursday, flying from Philadelphia, looking out the TWA jet window? I had never been away from home. There was my father Eddie, crying on my mother's shoulder, and she hugged me. Then I arrived in Chicago and I took the Axar Bend, a slow milk train, getting into Fairfield, and thanking the good Lord for putting off getting drafted for a couple of years. And I did get drafted right after graduation. And what a commencement ceremony it was. On that day, we were interrupted by a violent thunderstorm that knocked out the power, ironically, during the singing of When You Walk Through a Storm. One more, really. Yes, we ask, where have the years gone? The years have brought us here today. Fairfield, Iowa, 52556, just a stone's throw from the campus, whose administration, faculty, and staff like Chefs Mike Young and Captain John Bailey from the Old South Room, and cafeteria server Erman. They made sure we ate well, and Doc Bob, and Mrs. Louise Roberts, and so many others who taught us to overcome adversity, work hard, Get up when you get knocked down. Turn stumbling blocks into stepping stones. And like my mother Jeannie always said, Larry boy, if you dream it, you can achieve it. Well, one more quick true story. Many years ago when I was teaching a graduate course at Rowan, one of my students, a teacher, shared her thoughts at her school about my teaching style and my approach. One of her fellow teachers asked, "Did your professor attend Parsons College? He sounds so much like the professors who worked with my father, Parsons campus minister, the Reverend Jack Garstein." When the student shared that story with her class, I filled with emotion. Again, the Parsons legacy. So yes, my life has come full circle, and no matter what happens from this day forward, as my mother promised, I have achieved my dreams. And I thank Doc Bob, and I thank Nance, and I thank everyone here, and I especially thank you, Parsons College. Go Wildcats!
Hi, I'm here to present Narda Simonson Murphy, class of 1964. I've known Narda since pledging the Alpha Zeta Delta sorority, of which Narda was president. I was honored when she selected me as a pledge daughter and felt blessed as she and her future husband, Patrick Murphy of Phi Sig, guided me through my years at Parsons College. Narda will tell you that it all started at Parsons College. She came to Parsons as a farm girl from Marion, Iowa, at the young age of 16. She later received a master's degree at Michigan State University and suggests that the wonderful experience and the instruction she received from outstanding professors such as Dr. Keith Goldtree, Dr. Robert Tree, and many others at Parsons made that accomplishment less challenging, and it's contributed much to her career as an educator. Narda currently serves as a superintendent of Williamston Community Schools in Michigan, a position which she has held for 5 years. As a longtime educator myself, who has worked with a number of superintendents, and who was also married to one at one time, I know of the challenges and of the hard work this position poses. Along with current knowledge of the curriculum and instructional methods to make students achieve, a superintendent has to successfully manage and direct a number of stakeholders, to include the Board of Education, the teaching and classified staff and their respective unions, and also the community organizations such as the PTA. The educational background of the superintendent is essential. Prior to her current position, Narda piled up many awards during her successful 40-year career as an educator working directly with children. These awards are listed in your program. Also listed in your program are Narda's role in various professional organizations throughout the state of Michigan and the United States, as well as her involvement in the community of Williamston. I'm proud and honored to introduce Narda.
Thank you, Sandy. Why I have to follow a storyteller like Larry is beyond me. And I do have to take a moment when you said it was live streaming. Hello to my grandchildren, because I know they're watching. I would like to congratulate the other distinguished student alumni. I always have a little bit of trouble with words. My husband used to tease me about how I could take any word and create my own expression. I called it as the Iowa farm girl in me, that we just kind of creatively go there. But I was sharing with our Board of Education, and in fact I had to ask them to change our meeting date so I could be here. And I was sharing with them that I was the extinguished student. And they looked at me and I'm thinking, what did I say? And then I distinguished. I really would like to thank all of you, thank the people who organized this. I mean, I think when Dave called me, he asked me if I was sitting down, and I said yes, and after he told me, I thought I should have been laying down. I was so excited and so honored. I'm just absolutely humbled to be here in the presence of these very accomplished people. I'm just an ordinary person doing an ordinary job, and it did all start here. Parsons College changed the course of my life. I would like to thank my opposite sisters that are here this weekend, supporting me with their enthusiasm. I have not seen some of them for a long, long time, and the decades just absolutely melted away. Any one of them, as I've listened to their life stories, could be standing here accepting this honor. They've accomplished incredible things, and I was amazed, astounded, and in absolute awe of each one of them. 4 years is all I was here. 4 years, that's about that much of my 7 years on the life here. It was just a tiny slice of my life, but what a huge impact. First of all, I met Patrick here. He changed my life. We were married for 43 years, had 2 sons. Now I have 5 grandchildren. And Dr. Tree, I didn't know you were going to be here, but we talked about you a lot over the 43 years. We both became historians in our own way. I was a social studies teacher. Patrick started out as a teacher and then became a state historian for the state of Michigan. And his absolute joy and soulful passion for history changed some of the spots in Michigan. He helped develop the beautiful, beautiful building in Lansing, that's the State Historical Museum. And he has helped, or in his lifetime, preserved many sites in Michigan that were going to rag and ruin, and he helped pull them back together, and now many visitors from across the nation enjoy them. So thank you, Dr. Tree. You lit that fire. It also left an impact on my career, but in a little bit of a different way. I think it was David that mentioned that a lot of people should have figured out the Parsons, what was happening at Parsons. But in my world today, we talk about failure is not an option. That's a national agenda in education. We talk about No Child Left Behind, the NCLB, which some people frown about, but listen to what it says, no child left behind. We talk about never, ever, ever lowering the bar, that rigor, relevance, and relationships are what make a difference in our classrooms. And that was the moral imperative at Parsons, and it influenced me. I left here, and that has kind of been the framework of my life as an educator since I started teaching in 1965. All of these have defined all of our lives, and they were a part of the Parsons experience. We were way ahead of our time on this campus, and I had no idea because, as Andy said, I was 16. I turned 17 my first week here at Parsons. I tell this story that, I let people kind of believe they think I'm a child, brilliant or something, but really I went to a one-room schoolhouse and took 2 grades in 1 year because there was nobody else in the classes. They just pushed me on through. But I didn't admit that for a long, long time because it sounded like I was 16 when I went to college. That's not part of it. But anyway, being at Parsons did change the course of my life. I want to thank again the people who are responsible for putting this together, for all of you for being here, and just to say again, I'm just extremely humbled and very, very proud of this award. Thank you.
Ray Stolarczyk. Ray Stolarczyk grew up in Chicago, and he went on to attend the Big Ten school, university. He transferred to Parsons College, and it didn't take him long to figure out the difference. Ray was no longer a number in a revolving door classroom with a professor who was in and out of lectures faster than you could say debit and credit. He got to know his professors at Parsons well, and they got to know him well. If he had a question, they were there. If he needed extra help, they were there. Ray made the dean's list, graduated Parsons with honors, and a major in accounting. Not long after leaving Parsons, he joined the premier regional CPA firm in Chicago. They specialized in auditing thrifts. Now, what was a thrift? A thrift in those days is what we now call a savings and loan. When this company was purchased by a larger international CPA firm, they recognized Ray's talents, put him on the fast track for CPA certification, which gained him membership to the Illinois CPA Society and the American Institute of CPAs. He also found himself responsible for audits of clients with assets exceeding $1 billion and playing a key role in the conversion of the first Chicago thrift to a publicly owned company. Ray's interest in thrifts, savings, and loans led him to join Fidelity Federal Savings and Loan as Vice President and Treasurer. He immediately began a transformation of this small one-office financial institution, revolving around only a few people, to a company position and capable of posting major growth and expanding locations. Ray updated the systems, reorganized the board, installed key committees, added stock incentives, and increased the assets and number of locations. In essence, Ray led the expansion and conversion of Fidelity to the new Fidelity Bank Corp, now a publicly held savings bank with stock traded on the NASDAQ. Ray became president, then he was promoted to chief executive officer, and then on to chairman of the board of directors. He was elected director of the Illinois Member Thrifts and served 3 terms. He was asked to speak at the Federal Housing Bank meeting in Washington, D.C. 18 years later, he joined the MAF Bank Corp as a director and oversaw the acquisition of his former company. During the process, Ray's duties were expanded to participation in the Illinois League of Financial Institutions, a group of over 500 thrifts. Initially, he served on the board and as a trustee to the trust, but was promoted to chairman of the league, also serving and chairing a number of other committees and becoming vice chair of the trust. Ray retired in 1997 and devoted his time and efforts to the community. He's involved in the Kiwanis Club, the funding of the local PTA, special groups, special needs for children, and the fundraising of the Boy Scouts of America. After a well-earned career impacting and developing, Ray and his wife, Bonnie, now are retired and split their time between Naples, Florida, and Egg Harbor, Wisconsin. I'm extremely proud to present my fraternity brother, my friend, Ray Stolarczyk.
What an honor it is to be here today. I need to start my remarks, though. A dear friend of mine put my name in nomination, Ernie Costantino. Ernie and I met here at Parsons and became very, very good friends, as well as fraternity brothers. Ernie, as it turned out, grew up several miles from my house in Chicago, probably more like 2 or 3, but we hadn't met till we both came to Parsons. Ernie, Ernie succumbed to leukemia. John was nice enough to take over as the presenter. And thank you for that. Whew. Ernie, I love you. You don't want to be number 9 on this group. Well, 8 technically, but you still don't want to be down that list. What a distinguished group of people. I'm so happy I made it this year to this presentation, and I'm truly happy to hear that it's being broadcast now, or streamed, whatever the technical terms are nowadays, out to many more who couldn't make it for various reasons. I'll keep my remarks brief. because my memory isn't that good. But also, as I drove into Fairfield for the first time since 1964, the memories started flooding back. I can recall my dad dropping me off at the dorm. He made the long drive from Chicago. In those days, without the interstates, we unloaded the bags from the trunk of my car, or my dad's car, put them on the curb. He shook my hand and said, "Remember, postage is a lot cheaper than phone calls." He drove off. That was the first of the culture shocks that happened on my arrival at Parsons College. As John said, I was used to auditoriums, probably with more than 100 students listening to a professor, then going to classrooms and being taught by graduate students, one of whom had dentures that were causing him problems while he spoke. And that was just a calculus course in my engineering quest. Here at Parsons, freshman humanities, can you believe freshman humanities was the shot across my bow. Dr. John Crosser, who happens to be a PhD from Harvard. Harvard? What did I know? What was I doing here? Humanities. That was just the start. I mean, I could name, as others have, the other tutors, teachers, friends who were every bit as difficult on students as anyone from the U of I could have been. But they also had a character, a part of what they did that I still have trouble understanding today, but very much appreciate. I couldn't be here except for them. And I thank them, each and every one, and honor them. I'm also honored to be inducted into this society of very distinguished people, and honored very much by this board who made that election for me. I thank you all. Thank you, John. Welcome back, Carter. I could probably talk about this guy for quite some time here. He also was a fraternity brother, and he was quite a character. His name is Phil Suarez. Today we honor Phil for his achievements. And if you attended Parsons during the early 60s, there's a very good chance that you knew Phil Suarez. Phil was a gregarious, upbeat, happy-go-lucky personality with more charm than Cesar Romero and more charisma than Carlos Montalban. The 4 years that he spent in Fairfield and in Parsons may have been the only 4 years in his entire life that he was out of New York City, and probably 4 of the richest and most real years of his life, where he grew up in New York. Phil came to Parsons on a basketball scholarship. He could shoot the lights out at 100 yards away, but he barely could spell the word defense. And if anybody made an impact on his life while it was Parsons, I'm sure it was O.B. Nelson. He could also sling a softball, as in fast-pitch softball. After graduation, Phil returned to New York City, and he learned from a friend that a very big and popular communications
communications company, Transnational Sports Communication advertising marketing firm, was looking for a fast-pitch softball pitcher for their softball team. Phil fit the bill. He was what they called a ringer in those days. But once hired, Transnational had to find a job for Phil besides slinging a softball. So they placed him in sales and marketing, and his basic job was to entertain clients, take them to lunch, promote the business, and throw a softball. During the course, he also learned a bit about video production, video communications. Not long after, he met a gentleman named Bob Giraldi. He met him on the basketball court, no surprise there. They talked, and soon after, they formed a company called Giraldi Suarez Productions. It became very successful. They received numerous video production awards, and according to People magazine, they at one time commanded $6,000 an hour for their services. Some of their more notable clients and commercials that they participated in and were awarded. Did you ever see the Michael Jackson Beat It commercial from the old days? That's a Giraldi Suarez production. Do you remember the Miller Light beer commercials with all the old boys and stuff in this, and Whitey Ford and John Madden and whoever else you can think of from those years? Tastes great, less filling. Giraldi Suarez production. And they also did work for Paul McCartney, Lionel Richie, who I saw as kind of a semi-regular in one of Phil's restaurants, and Pat Benatar. To top that off, Phil was involved in the production as executive producer of a full-length movie entitled Dinner Rush. He loved to entertain. Fire Island on Long Island was a favorite location of Phil's to entertain, but he became disenchanted with the restaurants on Fire Island. So what do you do when you become disenchanted? You open your own restaurant, which is exactly what he did, and he called it Les Docs. The only previous restaurant experience that Phil had was very, very brief. But yes, believe it or not, it was in Fairfield, Iowa. During his senior year, which would have been back in 64, 65, he and a fraternity brother opened a little submarine sandwich shop. It was on 4th Street by the railroad tracks, and you all remember it as an area we used to call Little Chicago. It was wedged in between the popular Den and Why Not bars. They called it Phil and Chick's Wedge In. Perhaps that was the seed from which the interest in restaurants was spawned. As Phil's success and confidence soared, he envisioned opening a restaurant in New York City. Wow, what a big chunk. But as it turns out, New York City is Phil Suarez's stage. On a second trip to Positano, Italy, he found a chef. He brought him back to the States, taught him English, and opened up a place on Park Avenue South, which he appropriately named Positano's. It was a major success and led Phil to open another, and another. Later, he partnered with the famous French chef, Jean-Georges, and they together have gone big time. Their marquee locations in New York right now are Jean-Georges, which happens to be in the Trump Tower, JoJo's, which was voted by Esquire magazine as the #1 restaurant in New York City some time ago, Gigino's 2 locations, Mercer Kitchen, Ferry Street, ABC Protina, and on and on and on. Since then, they formed what they call the Suarez Restaurant Group, LLC, and currently own, license, lease, or franchise more than 30 restaurants within the United States and worldwide. Some of the cities and locations on that list, which include their restaurants, are, to name a few, London, Shanghai, Paris, St. Barts, Los Cabos, Mexico City, Kauai, San Juan, Qatar, Bora Bora. And you also find Suarez eateries in the Bellagio Hotel, Prime Steakhouse, Spice Market in Atlanta, JG Grill, Bal Harbor, Maine, and Park City, Utah. The Market in Boston, J&G Steakhouse in Scottsdale, and Washington, just to name a few. In the latest venture, currently they partner with Starwood Hotel and Resorts worldwide and Cateron Partners as the basis to create an international multi-concept restaurant licensing business. And Phil, who has been a New York Knicks season ticket holder for over 40 years, is negotiating with Madison Square Garden concessions to introduce a new concept called Simply Chicken, where they will supply the food to the executive suites, and on and on and on. And one time when he took me to Yankee Stadium, as a little sidelight, he takes me to Yankee Stadium, I've never been there. We're walking along, and somebody else come up in the top. Hey Swaz. Walking along with us. Who was that? Oh, that was Whitey Ford. He works for us. Whitey Ford, famous Hall of Fame baseball pitcher. You'd think that would be enough to earn a couple plaques and do a whole bunch of things, but in the community, Phil has also received the Ellis Island Medal of Honor Award. He's been named to the 100 most influential business leaders in New York City. He's been named to the list of 100 most powerful minority business leaders in New York. He's on the board of the Police Athletic League, the New York Urban Coalition, president of the Catholic Big Brothers Association, and he continues to be a champion for the revival of the Harlem Revival Project. Unfortunately, Phil is traveling. As I understand it, he's traveling the Far East, who knows, developing or opening another restaurant. Was unable to attend and accept the award in person. Speaking for Phil and having spoken with him recently, I'm sure that he would want to say that he loves you all, he wishes you all safe travel, and thank you to the PCFF selection. Congratulate his cohorts over here. And he also would want you to know that even though he has moved on in life, that he still has never forgotten Parsons College or Fairfield, Iowa, and what it has done for him. So, in accepting the award, Phil was a shaker and a roller and a mover and a shaker on the basketball court. We uncovered one of his old teammates who has gratuitously agreed to accept Phil's plaque today and say a couple words, and that would be Mr. Ken Rice. Ken, please come.
I can only tell a few stories about Phil. I can tell you this, that he always had a smile on his face, and regardless of where you saw him, he was usually singing a song. In the dressing room after practice and after games, it was a good thing that we all were wearing flat tops because he was always in front of the mirror. Everything looked great. I'm not sure of the date, but I think it was 2003. In my office one day, I got Inc. magazine. And I'm looking at the cover, and I look at this guy's face. This really looks familiar. So I opened it up, and to my surprise, Phil Suarez was in the article just inside the magazine. And all of his accomplishments that John has just disclosed, I can only think of one other real good story. John reminded me of it last night. In a game at Fry Thomas Fieldhouse one night, OB put Phil in the game. Phil very seldom ever got in the game. He got the ball, he came down the court, dribbled around, did not pass off, went in and took a shot and scored. And of course, everybody applauded. And Phil immediately took it out. And immediately, OB pulled him out of the game. I won't tell the stories the night that Phil talked me into going to the golf court with him, because those don't want to be told. But it is an honor to accept this award for Phil Suarez, who was a great individual, even when he was at Parsons. Thank you.
Someone once told me to save the best to last. This lady's had a great influence on my life. Physical education teacher, professor at Parsons College, Vera Price Young, class of 46. Kay McPherson Ferguson, would you please come to the podium as presenter?
It's a pleasure for me to introduce Vera Price Young, who graduated from Parsons College, married a college professor, and became an assistant professor for 25 years at Parsons. Her enthusiastic efforts to help others was evident in her valedictorian speech from Udall High School in Appaloosa County, Iowa, where her family have roots for over 130 years. After enrolling in Parsons as a sophomore, her contributions were plentiful. She was president of the Empyrean sorority, worked as a student council member, was a member of the portfolio staff, associate editor of the Pirate, served as a social service chair, a member of the drama club, was an outstanding basketball team member. She worked to strengthen the YWCA and was honored in Who's Who's, elected as Flunker's Ball Queen, and graduated cum laude in 1946. She returned to Fairfield after one academic year in Sigourney, Iowa, and she assumed the role on the faculty as the Women's Physical Education and Health Instructor, and was head of the upper class house. She immediately began graduate work at the University of Iowa and completed an impressive longitudinal study, earned her master's degree, and was promoted to associate professor at Parsons College in the area of physical education and health. She speaks with great fondness about Parsons College and recalls the days when the faculty and the students worked together on projects on the campus and in the community. She utilized many strengths to help students learn and retain the information, and she and her husband Tib joined other faculty members to help with the operating costs of Parsons College by accepting half salary for many years. After the closing of Parsons, she continued in her role of helping students achieve and guiding them to their career opportunities in her role as a biology, anatomy, and physiology teacher at Fairfield High School for the next 17 years. Except for one academic year, Vera has lived in the Fairfield community since 1946, remaining active in many organizations and assuming leadership roles. She's on the hospital auxiliary board, a member of the First Presbyterian Church, elected deacon of that same church, a member of the Wit and Wisdom Club, a member of the Delta Zeta sorority and PEO, served as a Sunday school teacher and vacation church school teacher, and was a 4-H leader for over 20 years. Vera and her husband Tib helped to strengthen
friendship force in Fairfield and opened their home to many friends from other countries. The Youngs have raised 3 very talented daughters. 2 are here today. Phyllis, who lives in Washington State, is employed by the United Postal Service, holds an MA degree. Dr. Joni, who is here today, sitting in front, has a Doctor of Veterinarian Medicine degree and an MA degree in physical therapy. She lives in Florida. And many of you know Linda because she lives right here close in Keosauqua. You've probably seen her directing choruses and choirs and performing in musicals in the area. Through the years, Vera has been a quiet philanthropist, assisting in many projects important to the Fairfield community, including the library, the Fairfield Art and Convention Center, preserving Parsons artifacts, the renovation of the bride's room at the First Presbyterian Church, and now she's really enthusiastic about the renovation of the new high school. Her work has been ongoing, diligent in purpose. She stimulated the minds of young adults. She challenged them to set high standards, and she encouraged them to set career goals. She obtained these strong traditions from her family. As she encouraged students to think about these lofty thoughts of world hunger and world peace. And these traditions came from her strong family who have lived in Iowa over 130 years. I'm very happy to present Professor Vera Price-Young.
Thank you, Kay, for the introduction. Thank you, members of the Wall of Honor Committee, for selecting me and for all your efforts. I know how much work you do before this event takes place. After Dave's introduction and Kay's gracious remarks, I decided you've heard enough about me. And I'm going to tell you about a place on campus that some of you may never have entered. Do you remember Trustee Gymnasium? You know that I literally lived in Trustee Gymnasium. Trustee was built in 1909. Do you remember what it looked like? I know you've seen it. It was a large gymnasium, but there were no corners on it. All 4 corners were taken off. The floor was almost regulation, but there's little room to go out of bounds. I coached the women's basketball team, which practiced there, as did the men's team, but they played their games at the high school. Down below were 2 locker rooms, 2 storage rooms, and the restrooms. At the back was a large room which housed the football uniforms at one time and equipment. The football games were played on the field down below, and down below the gym and the field house, before the field house was constructed. We don't know why the corners were not built on. And I did research to explain it. My theory is that if you were approaching on Highway 1 from the south, you could look across most of the beautiful campus beyond Trustee, and your view would not be bothered by the corners. I'm sure the architect had that in mind. When I began teaching at Parsons in 1947, I was assigned an office in Trustee. My husband Tim also had his office there, but he later moved to Parsons Hall, while I remained in trustee for the rest of my years at Parsons. Trustee Jim had a janitor, and his name was Jim. Jim also lived there, and he liked to square dance, and one of his many talents was calling square dances. The faculty didn't have dances at trustee on Saturday nights, which were a lot of fun and even good exercise. The sedate Dr. Winifred Watts wanted to learn to square dance, and she became a favorite partner of Jim's. Upon the 75th anniversary of the founding of Parsons in 1950, a party was held in the gym, and the festivities included a square dance demonstrated in period costumes. As you can see in this photo, President Scheer and his wife joined in, as did the Goldtrees and my husband and I. I don't know who were the fourth couple. Over the years, many Parsons students earned a part of their board and room, cleaning trustee Jim Mason, including my son-in-law David. When Opie Nelson joined the staff as head resident and varsity men's basketball coach, he had an office in the gym also. Between my classes, Opie would come in and out on the floor and challenge me to a game. He would shoot 5 shots from half court, and I would shoot from the free throw line. Additionally, he had to shoot over the sporting beam in the ceiling. He would usually win, but he was a sharp shooter. 2 other amazing events took place in trustee Jim Mason. One fall, the fast-paced construction common during the Roberts era, an academic building failed to be completed when the time classes started. When I arrived on Monday morning to teach my activity classes, an English class of 100 students had been set up on the floor of trustee Jim. The teacher was Dr. Louise Roberts. She was a superb teacher, and the rumor was if you dropped your pencil, you missed 2 pages of notes. Then in another year, one of the men's dormitories was not finished, and the men without housing had to bunk wall to wall in trustee for 3 weeks. The women in my activity classes could not use the floor, could not access their equipment, and needless to say, were not able to use the locker room. Trustee is no more, but it had a lot of uses. The homecoming dances were held there for many years. Other special dances, such as the Funder's Ball, were held there. The Maypole dance was held at the foot of the hill, which served as the grandstand. Sometimes plays were held there. There was probably not another gymnasium like it in the country, but where they got the plans for it, we don't know. I almost forgot that there was a swimming pool connected on the east side, which was first used by the college and later by the city until the Opie Nelson pool was finished. But in case this hot summer has blotted ice and snow out of your memory, Trustee Hill was a perfect place for sledding and tobogganing and even an organized snow carnival with plenty of room inside to warm up. Once the field house was built, Trustee was like a fifth cousin. It was no longer the center of activity, and the men moved their offices and practices to the new building. My department remained in trustee, and I was the last faculty member to occupy the building. We all had places that we remember with affection. I don't suppose there were more than a few days I was not in trustee during my 25 years of teaching at Parsons, although I taught classes in Foster Hall and Parsons Hall also. But we do get an affection for old buildings, and that's why I want to tell you about trustee today.
First thing, before I move forward on this, I want to send out a very special appreciation to someone who gives me great support in my life, and my wife, Sherry Blondett. When she's in the building, please recognize her. Thank you very much, Sherry. As most of you had a chance to observe when you came into our alumni hall, we have been blessed with the beauty of Barhide Chapel living on forever. The angel stained glass window is presented, and first phase was completed a year ago for this celebration. This window was dismantled by Bovard Studios in Fairfield, Iowa, and stored for 10 years. The committee of Sally Denny, who's in the audience, Susan Kessel, were co-founders of the Arts and Convention Center. I've had a chance to work with this for a period of time to help provide some fundraising through grants and other things that these ladies have worked. Phase 1 was completed, as we said, a year ago. Today, we recognize a major donor to Phase 2, which was just completed during the last 30 days. And those are the top 4 panels that complete the window all the way to the top. And the Higginbottom family here at Fairfield has been the primary sponsor on that. So we want to recognize them. There will be a short dedication following. So thank you. Phase 3 of the windows will be the illumination of these windows by Musco Lighting of Oskaloosa. If you've never heard of Musco Lighting, you may have known them for nighttime lighting football games. A few other places you might recognize: the White House, Washington Monument, Mount Rushmore, and the Golden Gate Bridge. So we feel they have the technology and availability for this. Our budget for this Phase 3 will be close to $15,000. $9,500 for the actual lights, and then the engineering and the other things from there to get the electricity in. I was blessed last evening. We sat down probably 10:30, 11 o'clock when we sat around the table, and John Blackstock says, "Here, Dave's an envelope for you." And a couple folks in our audience here today, they passed a check from a sister supporting this, so we received $1,000 last night. This morning at our board meeting, I mentioned this. Someone on the board gets a checkbook out, $250 comes in. Another gentleman who couldn't be with us today, another $250. So we already had $1,500 toward this next Phase 3. So I do thank those, and if anyone else is interested in supporting, please connect with me on that. This afternoon, there are things that we need to let you know about. Dr. Tree, who is on stage. Mark Schaefer, are you in the audience? Back here? Okay. Mark, you'll have a chance to see at the Carnegie Historical Museum. Myself, we were approached by Kyle and Terry Henson, Doug and Mary Harrison. I don't know if they're in the building at this time. I'd like to have them stand and be recognized, because they're folks that want to help perpetuate this. So if you stand up, thank you very much. Doug's dad, Bobby Harrison, is a CIDEP class of 57, and they have approached us about putting together a documentary film about Parsons. They attended our ceremony this morning, and what I would like to do either during lunch or this afternoon at the Carnegie Museum, if you have special stories that you would like to share and tell that maybe they didn't hear this morning, we'd like to have you speak with them. The son of Kyle and Terry has a cinema degree from one of the schools in California, and they would very much like to move forward so more people understand the history of Parsons College. Nancy Wertman is in our audience, and she's president of our Parsons College Alumni Association. Since it is the 40th anniversary of the final graduation ceremony, Nancy, I'd like you to take a moment or two to share from the Alumni Association.
Before I begin, I'd like to have a raise of hands for those that are here for the very first time since they graduated from Parsons. Wow. I want to thank you all for coming. And back in 2007, I started out with only 56 names. Today, I have reached 3,000 names. I'm very proud of this accomplishment and would like to see it continue to grow. I'm striving now for 4,000. All this time, I'd like to introduce to you the alumni officers. If you're here, please stand when you hear your name. Dave Neff, Vice President and Treasurer. Dixie Hookerman, Secretary. John and Rhonda Blackstock, the editor of the e-newsletter. Ed Longenecker, the distributor of the e-news. Frank Chalant, Bill Berger, John Bradwood, Richard Ivins, Kay Ferguson, and also Kim Rice, our web coordinator. I also want to thank Lloyd Jerome for providing the name tags. I was here when Parsons closed in '73. That will be a day that I will never forget. They had called an all-student body to announce the closing of Parsons. When we came out, the school's flag was at half-staff. And all kinds of media and all kinds of recruits were there. That will be a day I will never forget. Also, out in the lobby, be sure to check the alumni directory to be sure that your information is correct. And make sure to pass the word around about the Parsons Alumni Association and website. We are also on Facebook. Without all of you, this wouldn't be possible. As our little bumper sticker said, we're the little school that refuses to die. Thank you, and have a wonderful weekend.
Bar Height Organ is always been. You sure can. Okay, you step right up here.
My maiden name was Ford, and my father was Frederick Ford, who came to Parsons in 1931. He served as Parsons librarian for 4 years. And I remember people saying that in the library, if someone got noisy in the reading room, he might come out and say, "Wouldn't you like to take a walk by here?" And I just want to say that I'm glad that my father lived as a person he was, and that he passed away before he ever knew of the closing of Parsons. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. The Bar Height Organ has always been a major part of the chapel. Graduation honor services held in Bar Height on campus. Prior to the raising of the chapel, Mr. John Connett was invited today. John, if you're in the audience, please stand. And if not, let's thank John for all of his work. For those of you just returning, this beautiful instrument was totally disassembled by Mr. Connett. Never knew anything about organs, but as an electrical engineer for Bell Labs in Chicago, he had the gift of learning. It's been stored in various places around Fairfield for an 8-year time period, and 5 years ago, John began reassembling the organ here in the Sondheim Center where we sit today. 3 years ago, the second class inductees was privileged to meet Mr. Connett and hear the clear tones of the organ performed by Fairfield's own Werner Elmker. We would like to recognize John. He has dedicated over 2,000 hours of volunteering to this project, and we do thank him for that. At this time, Mr. Werner Elmker, who is our photographer in the balcony, but also very good at the Bar Height Organ, will share a couple short numbers with us before we move to the final phase of our dedication today. So, Mr. Elmker, if you would please. Serendipitous is a word that sometimes you just sort of pass by, but yesterday, unbeknownst to me, I was leaving the facility to go pick up these flowers at the flower shop, and I got a call from the box office saying, Dave, there are 2 Parsons folks who would like to talk to you. So I thought, okay, I will do that. And lo and behold, Marjorie Miller Nordstrom and her husband Fred are in transit from Park City, Minnesota, from their summer residence to Sanibel Island. Marjorie was the choir director at Parsons 1948 to 51, and so I'd like to invite them to the stage to lead us in our alma mater. Please stand and welcome back to your program.
We want to tell you that this was a serendipitous moment. But in 1950, Fred and I walked down the aisle at our wedding in Barhite Chapel. So this organ is very precious to us. Thank you so much for being here. I also want to tell you that I was here from the fall of 48 until the spring of 51. I was Miss Miller. However, I was wearing an engagement ring of this guy up at the University of Iowa, and then the Korean conflict broke out, and he was called to Korea, but he wasn't even still in Fort Leonard Wood. The faculty up here at Parsons said, we really don't want you going down there shacking up with that guy in Fort Leonard Wood. We think it'd be better to get married. So the house mothers got busy and decorated the chapel. The fraternity guys loaned their tuxedos, and we had a big wedding on October 28th, 63 years